give it a hand.
Thank y'all all so much, and I appreciate y'all coming, and we always look forward to opportunities to educate parents and people in the community about the services that we offer and help to answer those questions and things. So anytime I can be of help, please reach out to me. I do apologize that I had a PowerPoint mostly because it's prettier than I am, and it would give you some words on the wall to help follow as I'm talking about this, but that didn't work out for us today. So I have no problem talking, but y'all can tell I have South in the mouth. I'm a Southern girl, and so if you have trouble understanding what I'm saying, you can say, no, say that again. Or we discussed earlier about alphabet soup. My former supervisor always started a meeting saying, okay, we're going to get alphabet soup because this is what IDD means, and this is what D&E means, and this is, so if I start using, acronyms like that you don't really sure what I mean, just raise your hand or say, but I'll try to watch myself because we want this to be informative for y'all. I would like a show of hands if you or a person close to you is enrolled already in the IDD waiver. So we do have a couple. Do y'all know if anyone, if the person, you or the person is on the planning list for the waiver? Would you raise your hand? So
What is the planning list?
the planning list is kind of like the waiting list for the waiver.
That's
Yeah.
weird.
Planning list sounds prettier.
Gotcha.
But you're waiting. So, but that helps me to know who's in the room and such, because and I know that we did a provider fair up here in July, I think. Time flies. And there were a few from the ARC that came through that had never been evaluated and didn't know about IDD waiver. So I'm going to begin with just talking about what the waiver is. I'm going to talk about a couple of things. Well, first of all, we're very fortunate in Mississippi in that we have IDD services that are paid for by Medicaid. Not all Department of Mental Health services are paid under Medicaid. Some have some mental health grants, or and then the mental health side does have a lot of federal grants and things too. But on the IDD side, we do have the two programs that Medicaid funds to provide people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and autism some services. Now, the IDD waiver is almost 30 years old, so it's been around a long time, and so we have that enrollment, and we started a new program called the IDD Community Support Program. Some people will call it the 1915I. That's one of those numbers they'll shoot out at you, and you'll say, well, what on earth is that? But the IDD Community Support Program, or the 1915I, is another program that Medicaid has and DMH operates that offers some services to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and autism if they're not on the waiver. Now, you can't be enrolled in two waivers at the same time. And y'all know that we have other waivers in the state, and some individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities receive services from some of those waivers. That is I have to try to go through them. MDRS operates the independent living waiver and the spinal cord injury, brain injury waiver. And then Division of Medicaid has the elderly and disabled waiver and the assisted living waiver. And then the other one is the IDD waiver, which DMH operates. So all the waivers in the state are administered by Medicaid. It's all, they have the final authority over all of the approval of services and such as that. But DMH is the operating agency. So because we have worked in the IDD field and such, then you know, we help to develop those services, and then we certify and monitor all the providers through the state so that we try to make sure that they're doing the things that they need to be doing and following the regulations in that service provision. But then also we do operate this IDD waiver and the community support program. So we have approximately, you know, we have over 2,700 people that received IDD waiver services last year. And just a little over 1,000 are enrolled in the community support program. So that's the number-wise at the end of June for our fiscal year 2023. So sometimes people question and say, well, what is a waiver? You know, what am I waiving in order to get that service? And it's not you waiving anything, it's the state of Mississippi and CMS waiving certain restrictions around what Medicaid can pay. And so in the Social Security Act, they developed, there is a section that was added on home and community-based services. And so it allows states to say that there are some people with, for instance, in a certain category like intellectual disabilities that may need more support than someone that's just on regular Medicaid. And so they waive the state wideness. Under regular Medicaid plan, anybody that qualifies for Medicaid and has Medicaid can get any of the services. You know, of course, has to be pre-authorized, all that, but they're eligible and they're able to receive those. But for ours on the home community-based services, it kind of carves it out and says, well, only these people that are eligible, you know, with this eligibility requirement can meet the waiver, can be enrolled in the waiver. Also, with our waiver, we have to show that we are diverting or trying to keep from institutionalizing a person. And so for the IDD waiver, we are diverting the institutional care like at an intermediate care facility for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, such as North Mississippi Regional Center in Oxford. So we're saying that we're going to offer home and community-based services so that people don't have to go be institutionalized to get the services and supports they need. So that's what the waiver is. Now we have, and I gave you a handout, and under the IDD waiver, and I tried to divide this up, and you will see the IDD waiver was designed, and we tried to look at services to wrap around the person to provide all of their needs. We have some services that are, you know, for all ages, and then we have additional services for people like once they get out of school. And because under the IDD waiver, we are required to exhaust all education benefits and benefits from like Mississippi Department of Rehab Services, like voc rehab, helping to find a job. Those things have to be exhausted first before we can do the waiver service. So, but it shows you different categories. So we have those home and community services, which are more in-home services like personal care services. Someone to come in and help a person with their bathing and such as that. And I'll go over each of these little categories. So we have those in-home services, we have day program services, we have employment, residential, we have behavioral crisis type services, and then we have a couple of others that we just put in a other category like therapies and such. But I'm going to start going through the in-home services, and I will start with the service that probably requires the least support that a person would need. And as it goes as I tell you, the next one, they might need a little bit more support. Now, two services we have that are in-home, they're kind of equal, but the in-home respite service is really more of for a person that's more homebound and has very limited activity outside of the home because of their either behavioral medical issues and such. But it is designed to give respite to the primary caregiver, you know, to allow someone else to come in and care for the person so that the primary caregiver can maybe lay down, take a nap, or go to a doctor's appointment, or do the things that he or she needs to do. The next is home and community supports, and it has that personal care element in it, but it also, so you can get the personal care services at home, but the service is designed to help increase community participation and help to get the person into the community if possible. You know, we do have some people that just choose and don't want to, or families don't want them to go out. But home and community sports can help get them, you know, take them to the park, walk through the mall, you know, go to a store, and go to a ball game and do some of those kinds of things in the community, whereas in-home respite is very limited on their time out. The next in-home type service would be in-home nursing respite, and those are for people that have really complex medical needs. They have to require a skilled nursing level of care. You know, it'd be for people like with feeding tubes, people on vent, people that maybe have to have rescue meds during a seizure. But you have to have that level of, require that level of support to get that service. And it has to be justified, and there's a form that a doctor has to fill out to say, and we have to review it and see that you can qualify for that. The next set of services I'm going to go over is residential services. So these services are, and remember I'm going to start with the ones that, the people that require the least supports. So I'll start with supported living. Supported living, in supported living, the individual lives in their own house or apartment. They can share rent with another person, but it's not in the family home where they have a primary caregiver that's taking care of them and taking on that responsibility. They're living independently, but they still need some support from a caregiver or a staff person that could come in and maybe even help budget money, help clean their house, help teach cooking skills and those sorts of things, to take them to the grocery store to pick up items. And it is limited to only 8 hours per day for the waiver. So they're living independently without support those other hours of the day. The next two services I will say are it's shared supported living and supervised living. Shared supported is generally at like an apartment complex, and you have 24/7 staff that would be over possibly 2 to 3 apartments. It depends on how many rooms are in that apartment and what their support needs are as to how it's staffed. But the staff person might not be under the roof with them at all times, but they're there. There's a 24/7. They're there on the grounds. They're there to be able to call for help immediately. They're in and out of the house, but they help them to access the community, going to the grocery store, going to the movie, going out to eat with a friend, all of those things too. But it's not the 24/7 eyes on the person. Supervised living is that next level of residential service where it is 24/7. You have a staff in the house with you. Most all of our houses in the state are 4-bedroom. Usually people have a private room. We have a few that may be a 3-bedroom and they may have 2 individuals share a room. But the person gets to choose what they want. You know, if they don't want to share a room with someone, we will be looking for that private room in the supervised living house. But their staff is right there with them at all times and helps them through all the things that they need through the day. Can take them out for a job or take them out to a day program in the day and to do fun things on the weekend and such as that. Now, the service, those residential services only pays for the staff. Some people aren't aware until they start enrolling in waiver that they think, oh, it's going to pay for their apartment, it's going to pay for everything. But no, because it's the people living independently, so they share the rent expense for the home and share the utilities, and such as that. And that is all outlined in an agreement when you first move in, and at least annually, or if that changes, they'll talk to you about this is what it would cost to live here in this home. But then they provide the 24/7 staff, they provide the transportation for where you need to go, and such as that. Okay, so the next one I'm going to go over is day program, because I think when people enroll in waiver, generally people are most interested in the, something to do during the day, and possibly the residential type services. Those are our two most popular categories, or if it's someone that is living at home with family with a lot of high support needs, those in-home services are what people ask for. But the day services, we have 3 services. One is called Day Services Adult, and it's really about, teaching social living skills, but it's about, networking with other people, but also going into the community to do fun activities, both in the community and at the day program. The pre-vocational services is a service that helps teach a person pre-work type skills. In pre-vocational services, they talk to a person about, okay, these are the type jobs that are in our community. They also ask them, what are you interested in? And so they talk about what's in that job, what types of tasks or activities you might do in that job, how to apply for a job, how to look for a job, how to dress for a job interview, and those things. So it's those pre-employment skills. And then community respite is especially popular for school-age children, because it is respite, but some people do not want a respite staff coming into their home, like the in-home respite staff. So this would be provided at a day program. And so a lot of our children that are enrolled in school use this like in the afternoon after school. They go, for community respite, or for those extended school breaks during the holidays and summers, they have somewhere to go, and the parent can feel good that there's staff there to take care of them. So the next would be employment supports. So so we have something called job discovery, and job discovery is only 30 hours over 3 months. But what it is basically like they're doing a person-centered plan, but what what kind of jobs? It's employment related. What are his skills? What are his abilities? What are his interests? And what is it that you like to do? Because all of us, want to be doing work that is meaningful to us, and you usually don't last very long if you're not happy with what you're doing. And so that it just helps to connect and make it more person-centered. And so it's coming up with that plan, that job discovery plan. And so supported employment is something you probably have heard about. And so supported employment would have a person, a staff that would help you find a job, help you apply for the job, and then once you get the job, it goes something we call job maintenance, where you get a job coach that works right alongside you to help teach you the job. And they're also there to help support you in your personal needs and things like that that you may have while you're at work. Now, I did talk to someone, and I can't remember, I think it was someone in this room where we talked about employment, but we are required, because of those federal regulations that says we can't provide something that is, you can't have duplicative services, Medicaid paying two people to do it. And so MDRS, Mississippi Department of Rehab Services, takes priority over the waiver as far as providing that initial employment, discovery, job training, and such as that. But if they see that you need long-term, you know, I couldn't tell you a definite time period, but somewhere around a year, you know, you're not learning and they can't take their job coach out and you can't do it independently, they turn them over to us, you know, and say, okay, they need a long-term job coach, and we do supported employment. I do know that you can also, you're required to meet with them, like if you're on waiver or the other program I will talk about. If you're interested in employment, you're required to meet with Department of Rehab Services first, and you are able to sign and opt out saying you don't want their support. And if you opt out, you can come on to supported employment under us. I always encourage families, and you know, a lot of times I will hear, oh, we don't want them to work because it will affect their Medicaid. If they start making too much money, they're going to get kicked off Medicaid, and then we'll lose all of our services. But Department of Rehab Services has a vocational counselor that can sit down with you and look exactly what his Social Security benefits are and say, you know, you could still, they know the limits, and so they could say, you know, you could work 3 days a week and it not affect your check at all. So that's a very big benefit, and it enables people to not only get their benefits, but then they're bringing in additional monies to help support them and help to be independent. And I think we all know that getting a job gives a lot of people self-satisfaction, to have more meaning, you know, in life. They feel like they're contributing, and we want to integrate them into the community and help them to be just as independent as possible. So supported employment is a good thing. I'm going to go to the behavioral crisis type services now. If I can remember, I kind of skipped around in my PowerPoint. But I can talk about them. I have to find where it's at. But so we have 3 behavioral type services, and that is, the first one is behavior support. So what is behavior support? If the person has some significant behavioral issues that are keeping them from being integrated into the community like they want or need to be, or you know, or affecting their living situation and such, but you know, we have it starts with a behavior support evaluation, and we have a consultant that would come in and do an evaluation and develop a behavior support plan. And then based on that evaluation, they determine if additional behavior supports is needed. Like, so they may say, yes, you know, this person does have a behavior plan, and we want to make sure the plan's working. They're required to teach the family, if the person's working, or all the staff that work with them, on the plan, so that everyone is in sync. We're doing the same things. When this issue comes up, this certain behavior, then we know this is how we should redirect, this is how we work in this situation. And then, you know, for a lot of people, their plan needs to change. Your behaviors may be this at some point, but then some new issue comes up, so the behavior plan would need to be updated and such. So we have other staff that, like, after the plan is done, the consultant does the behavior support plan, and he recommends some long-term behavior support, so many hours a month through the year. And then it's usually a specialist that comes in that he trains on the plan, and this is what we want you to do. And so kind of comes in and observes, just them in their natural element. See how the family or how the staff person's interacting with them, observes behaviors to say, hey, you didn't follow the plan. This is the way you need to do it. So they're teaching and observing and collecting data. The next step is a higher level called crisis intervention. And now crisis intervention is for people that are really having those very extreme kind of volatile type behaviors, that they're at danger of harming themselves or others. They're hitting, they're maybe destroying property and such, and it may be that they just need to be removed from the situation, or this is the same type staff as the behavior supports, but they would come in and do crisis intervention. And you can get crisis intervention two ways: a week at a time, whereas the staff's working with them 24/7, or it can be episodic. So for people, it may be a person with autism, it may be a person with dual mental illness diagnosis that are not, there's not something happening every day, or possibly not even every month, but they may cycle through periods of time where the behaviors are more extreme. So you can get that crisis intervention. And I will just say, and I probably gave you more information than you want to know, but we only currently have one crisis intervention provider in there, below Jackson at Boswell. And so that's something that we hope that we can expand and improve, because if we had some crisis stabilization type units or services through the state, it would be helpful to families. The next category is called crisis support. Now, crisis support is a 30-day stay in a crisis center, in ICF, intermediate care facility like North. But it has to be, either meets two categories to qualify for crisis support. It's like there's a sudden, the caregiver is incapacitated, or there's maybe a death. Sometimes we'll have that maybe a mom is about to have surgery and there's no one else in the family that will be there to help support this person, and it may be a short-term 4 to 6 week period that she needs that, and so we can do crisis support for that reason. And the other one is about those extreme behaviors, like I mentioned in crisis intervention, where someone is at danger of harming themselves or harming others, destroying property, eloping, some of those types of behaviors where they need to come in for the 30 days under an ICF and be evaluated. Sometimes we'll find that the person may need a medication change, but they have, the doctors, nurses, and all there to be able to provide that. And it's 30 days. We can do an additional 30 days if it's something like a medication change and they need more time to work with the person. So, the last couple of services that I said were other services are therapies, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and physical therapy. And so Medicaid made a change in rules in like November or a year and a half ago, whereas they're paying for most all therapies as regular Medicaid state plan. Everybody can get it. You just have to have your doctor's order and get a prior approval. So we are not paying for very many therapies. The only way they'll allow someone with Medicaid waiver to get one of those therapies, you have to have the doctor's order, and the person has to be homebound and cannot get out to an outpatient therapy clinic to get the therapy. So we have very few people that get the therapies. There's a service called transition assistance because we're working on trying to deinstitutionalize people. Instead of people living at North Mississippi Regional Center, we want to bring them out into the community with this type of support. And so transition assistance is just a one-time setup fee. It's a one-time $800. The person is not just given the $800. It has to be spent by the agency with receipts turned in to say, and there's certain things that they can do. Like it may be turning on the person's electricity. It may be buying a new mattress at home, or it may be buying the person's groceries. You know, we pay pest control for, you know, under that and all. So they transition out of ICF. In order to help them to be successful in the waiver, we have that $800, and it has to be spent on certain categories. And now the last one, and I don't think I put it on here, is specialized medical supplies, and it is no longer under the IDD waiver. Those are things like your diapers, blue pads, catheters, things like that that people need. And Medicaid, a year or so ago, made it as it is all under regular Medicaid. So they should be able to get it. Now, I've had a few complaints from families that said we were getting it under waiver, but when we moved over here, they're saying we can't get it. And I've been told what Medicaid authorizes is only 6 items per day. Well, for someone that needs more diapers than that, so you're talking about 3 diapers and 3 blue pads. You may need more than that. You just have to have the doctor's prescription and turned in and pre-authorized and approved, and you can get more than that. So I try to help inform families of that. If they're not getting their supplies, you can contact Medicaid yourself. But your company should be aware of how to do that. The last service is support coordination, which is just the case manager. She's the one that's going, or he, is the one that is going to, tell you about all the services and who the providers are, and let you, help coordinate services and get those arranged for you. She facilitates a person-centered plan meeting with the person, their family, the providers, to discuss what's important to the person, what are the things that really bring value and the things the person wants to do, well, what's also important for the person, the things that we need to be aware of in order to protect and care for the person, like their medical needs. And so she develops this plan, and they have to submit all of that to DMH, and then we have staff that review and approve. And that plan has to be done at least every year. And a person can make a change in their services if they want. Now, I know I may be giving y'all too much information, but how do you become eligible? So a person to be enrolled in IDD waiver has to meet the level of care as an ICF, such as North Mississippi Regional Center. So the first step is an evaluation at their Diagnostic and Evaluation Department. We'll call it D&E. So you get the evaluation and you get put on a planning list. You do not have to be eligible for Medicaid when you go on the planning list, but you cannot be enrolled in waiver until you get Medicaid. So we had discussed that with a few people prior to the session starting, talking about, well, my child doesn't have Medicaid, and so we'd have to get Medicaid before we enroll. With with the Medicaid waiver, with our IDD waiver, and because we're diverting the institutional level of care, the income limits and the resource limits for Medicaid are raised higher than they are for a regular person that's just living at home that needs some medicine or going to the doctor. You know, so it's a higher limit. So some people qualify for Medicaid once they enroll in IDD waiver that do not qualify outside of the waiver. So when your name comes up for enrollment, we have a letter that we'll give to the family, and they take to the regional Medicaid office saying this person has been pulled to enroll in the IDD waiver. Please check the eligibility to make sure he would qualify once we enroll. And then so they can work out those details. Trying to say, I know y'all have questions and I'm pressed for time. Just real briefly, I wanted to tell you about the IDD Community Support Program. That's that other program, not waiver, but the other program that Medicaid has that DMH operates. You have to be at least age 18 and out of school in order to qualify for the Community Support Program. So it's not for children, and that's basically, you know, they're in school, they have education and some supports there. But they say you have to be at least age 18. We always encourage people to take the full benefit of education, and your school districts are also working toward transitioning, hopefully, they're working toward transitioning that person out once they leave the school, and can help set you up with the referrals to vocational rehab, the Mississippi Department of Rehab Services, and those, so that they're doing those things even before they're coming out of school. And so, but you do have to be at least 18 and out of school. Now, under this program, you do have to have full Medicaid benefits. And so what that means is, unlike the waiver that gives you that extra income and resource limit, under the community support program, you have to meet basic Medicaid, kind of like that SSI level of income and resources. But as I was saying earlier, Medicaid has, I couldn't give you a precise number. I've seen the list, it's probably 50 categories. There are tons of categories of eligibility, so you don't necessarily have to draw a check to get Medicaid. So you usually start with the Social Security, the disability part, and then if you're not getting a check, just go to the Medicaid regional office, because you may qualify for Medicaid. It wouldn't give you a check, but it would give you services and supports. Some of you are probably aware of disabled child living at home. We try to tell people about that kind of category, because the person will qualify based on their support needs. And I'll tell you that evaluation from NMRC helps a lot when you're applying for that type category. Take them a copy of that evaluation and, you know, school records, or get the school to send them records. And so that helps to justify that category. There is another one, like you can only have that until you turn 19 and you're considered adult. But there's one called disabled adult child that a lot of people that are on the disabled child living at home just move over to once they turn 19. But Medicaid's going to be looking at income and resources, and you know, it's Medicaid. Medicaid makes that decision about the eligibility for the financial part and for the Medicaid part. But under this community support program, you don't have to meet that institutional level of care. But you do have to need at least, you have to show through the evaluation that NMRC will do, North Mississippi Regional Center will do, that shows that you have deficits or significant deficits in at least 2 of your activities of daily living. I won't read through those for you, but it's, you know, it's like your self-care, your mobility. There's 7 categories, but you got to show you have significant deficits in at least 2 to qualify for that. So The income thing sometimes is a problem for families, especially if the person is drawing off a disabled or a deceased parent. So they might not qualify for the income level for this level of support. But the good thing is, there is no waiting list for the community support program. Now, we do, and so there's no waiting list, so you have to have the evaluation, you're eligible, they refer you to a targeted case manager that helps you find services. They do not have the number of services that we have. So they only have, they have targeted case managers, or what their case managers are called. And then they have the 2 day service programs, day services adult and Prevoke that I told you about. They have supported employment service. And so those are the services and they have supported living. Remember, that is the type of residential care that you don't need much support, and under waiver you're only getting 8 hours. Well, under the community support program they only do 4 hours, but they have their 5-year renewal November 1st, and they have been approved by our Medicaid, and we assume CMS will approve it, to go up to 8 hours. They are also going to add the in-home respite. It is going to be limited to 4 hours. So you're talking about people being able to either go to a day program, have some in-home respite, and the block of time that parents are working, or their caregiver at home is working, then they have services and support. You can either go to a day program, a job, or and possibly tack on that in-home respite too. So no waiting list, but at least this has expanded some to help alleviate all these parents that are out there waiting for years and years for the waiver.
What was the name of that one?
Community support program. Community support program. You'll hear them call it CSP, you'll hear them call it 1915I, but community support program. And it's the same process, evaluation at North Mississippi Regional Center Diagnostic Services, and then they'll refer directly if you qualify. Now, they also will check, one thing I didn't say, is that they will check your category of eligibility. Remember, you have to, for this program, you do have to have that full Medicaid benefit type income and resources. So if your income's too high, there's certain categories that qualify and there's certain categories that don't. But most people qualify at least by the time they turn 19 and are as an adult, unless you get into those complicated things where they're drawing income and resources off of deceased or disabled parents. Sometimes that disqualifies. I'm sure y'all probably have heard about ABLE accounts at Mississippi Department of Rehab Services. That's a good option for someone that maybe has inherited some money from a deceased parent, but they can put their savings into this ABLE account and it doesn't count against your Medicaid benefits. But again, I'm not the expert on ABLE and I'm not the expert on Medicaid, but those are some resources for you. And I apologize that I've gone so long, but
That was great information.
y'all have any questions? You want to save the questions till later, or do you want
Do we have any brief questions, or?
I have one. Does the evaluation ever run out? Do you have to have it periodically?
We used to require it like every 6 years for an adult. No longer, it does not.
Okay.
But it does have to be updated prior to renewal. Like anyone under the age of 16 has to have the evaluation every 3 years under waiver. But after age 16, they do not have to have another evaluation unless they're discharged or something. But on enrollment, like for instance, you've been on the planning list, let's say for 10 years, and we called your name and said, you're gonna be enrolled in waiver. They have to do an update.
Okay.
they have to get the new information and see what things might have changed. Maybe they evaluated the person at 16 or 17, but now they're 27 and their needs have changed. You know, they've learned some more. Maybe they've even had a medical issue that they didn't have as a child, but, you know, that has made them decline in their mobility or such. So they have to look at that and you know, and
Right,
do.
so if he had an evaluation at 13 and he's 20, should we go ahead and set up an appointment for another evaluation?
Okay, they can put you on the planning list based on that 13, if it related and says you're eligible for waiver. So they could put him on the waiting list for that. And when you were enrolled in waiver, you would have to have an update.
Okay.
But if you want the community support program, that enrollment would be, and you qualify with your Medicaid, you would need to go ahead and update. They would need to go ahead and look at that.
We are kind of going on a kind of a campaign into the grade schools to talk about the IDD waiver, to make parents aware, and we of course mention it to all of our members at a very early age.
Right.
How long is the waiting list now? Last I checked, it was
The waiting list is 10 years long right now. So, you know, a lot of people say, well, why on earth is it so long? Well, the state has to match around 25% of your waiver budget. So we have to come up with that. Yes, it costs the state a whole lot less to, you know, than 100%, but the state has to have we have to pay CMS the 25%. And so the Department of Mental Health actually has to pay that match money. And so we're very much under the will of legislators on what our budget is, you know. And so we have to look at it each year and see how many we think we can enroll. We've had some really good years where we might have enrolled, you know, 300 or so, or we've had some real bad years where no extra funding. I mean, we had a year fundings were cut by millions of dollars, and so we had to say, well, how can we just keep things going for people that are already getting services? And actually, that is the year when things started changing and the state turned over services to private providers so that we could use that money to put in waivers so that more people could receive services. So.
okay. Everybody, can we give Betty a big hand?